Talk about how to access free legal aid in Washington. So it's not just going to be about landlords. I realized this was a poor title in retrospect. All right, so first...
One thing, talking to the microphone.
Okay, yep. All right.
And it's the green light means it's on.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so a couple of things. So the agenda here today is we're going to be going over this acronym, which is a really super fun acronym that is totally easy to remember, I'm sure. So when you're thinking about legal issues, I want you to think about these 5 issues: family, income, living situation, employment, and status. Those are the 5 most common legal issues. And then I'm also just going to talk about throughout the legal resources available in Washington. Please feel free to stop me for questions. We'll also have a lot of time for questions at the end. All right, so first thing first is a poll. First thing is, when you are talking with clients or patients or veterans, do you ask them about whether or not they have legal issues?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Are you familiar with civil legal aid resources in Washington state?
Not well enough.
Okay, I'm getting some sort of okay. Sort of, okay. And if you've referred a client to a legal resource, was it helpful? Sometimes. Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. I mean, as a legal aid attorney myself, I also say sometimes, so there's that. And we recognize that there's a lot more legal need than there is ability to provide it, and that is just a reality of this system here in Washington. And that is frustrating for us, it's frustrating for you, it's frustrating for veterans, and we do the best we can with the system, much like pretty much any other social system here nationwide. All right, so we are from the Office of Military and Veteran Legal Assistance. I've got my entire team in the room, so I've got Ian Anderson, my policy analyst there. I've got Kai Brown in the back, who's our outreach specialist. I've got Emma Fish back there somewhere, who is our program development coordinator. And I've got Gabe Hansen, who is our volunteer partnership coordinator. And they're all AmeriCorps, not policy analysts. The rest of them are all our AmeriCorps Vistas. So the Office of Military and Veteran Legal Assistance does 4 primary things. First thing is that we connect the community with legal help. So we connect veterans, service members, and their family members, so spouses, surviving spouses, domestic partners, and children, dependent children who are under the age of 21 with legal help. And so we don't provide the legal help directly, we connect them with pro bono attorneys, so free attorneys, or we connect them with legal resources, so things like we'll send them a self-help guide about how to solve the legal problem on their own. So a lot of the times somebody will come to us with just a basic question about how do I start a divorce? That is something we could send to an attorney, but that's also something that a lot of the time we can just send them a publication available on Washington Law Help that's here's literally a fill it out guide that will give you the documents that you need to then take to the courthouse and deliver and say, here are the documents that I need to file, I want to get divorced, and here are all the documents that I filled out, all filled out correctly. And then the last thing that we do is connect to other legal resources in Washington. And then provide trainings to attorneys and the community. So, like this. And then we also train attorneys to try to get them more familiar with the legal issues faced by veterans and service members and their families. And so, for example, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be giving a training to Washington State attorneys about how to assist veterans with VA claims so that they can represent veterans in VA benefits, claims, and appeals. We coordinate the pro bono attorney program. We recruit volunteer attorneys from across the state. If you know an attorney that might want to help, even with one case a year, please tell them to volunteer with us. We work with law firms that might have a large pro bono program that maybe want to volunteer with us. And then we also just try to get even our own attorneys at the Attorney General's office to volunteer. And then the last thing that we do is develop and analyze policy proposals. So if you're in the community and you're seeing a huge problem that affects your veteran community, come to us, tell us about it. We want to hear about it. You know, we try to kind of keep an eye on those issues ourselves, but we're not on the ground doing this work every single day. We're not hearing about all these issues. So if you've got a policy proposal, if you've got an idea, let us know about it. No promises we'll be able to do something about it, but we want to know. We want to keep track of what's going on. All right, and in terms of also getting an idea of what's going on, we also are trying to get a better sense of just the legal needs of the community generally. And so right now, as people who have walked by our table might have heard about, we have a legal needs survey going on. So we're gonna actually be doing 2 of these legal needs surveys. The first one is for community providers, people who are serving veterans. And that closes on the 19th of September. And then the second one that we're gonna be doing is starting this winter sometime, that is gonna go out directly to veterans across the state. And it's gonna be asking them, what are the most critical legal needs that you are facing? And so we're gonna use what we learned here based on what you all are sharing, what people across the state are sharing, to influence what we ask about and how we ask those questions. And then in between that, we're gonna release an early report that says community providers told us that these are the most critical issues that they're seeing. And then in fall 2024, we're gonna release a much larger report that is not only about the legal issues that we heard from community providers, but also from veterans. And then we're also gonna just summarize all of the data that we have seen over the last few years about the legal needs of veterans in Washington generally. So that's the QR code, but also there's candy out there that has the QR code on it. So please feel free to just come and grab bags of candy that have the QR code. It takes it about 10 minutes. SurveyMonkey tells me it takes 10 minutes for people to fill out. So far, as of 8/10, the issues that community providers were telling us were the most critical in Washington were housing and homelessness issues, family law issues, access to VA benefits, VA appeals, survivor benefits, and then just generally veterans knowing what's available and being able to access help. So those were the 4 biggest issues that we're seeing over and over and over again. And that lines up with what we see too with our data, is family law and housing, and family law, and family law, and family law, and family law. And then just generally people not knowing where to go. Sometimes we just get people who say, I found you on Google and I just don't know what to do. They might not even have a legal issue. Like we got a case a couple of months ago where they just needed help connecting to their local utility company because they needed help paying off a utility bill that they weren't able to afford. That's not necessarily a legal issue, that's just that they needed a social service connection. And we were able to provide that, but that's the kind of issue that I think a lot of the time people just don't know where to go. So, that was not what I meant to do. Why ask about legal needs? So, there are some really important reasons to ask about legal needs. Sounds like a lot of people here are already doing that, but important reasons to ask about legal needs are, 1, it creates stability. Legal services help people connect to and maintain stabilizing services and benefits. So not only VA benefits, but also it helps people keep their housing. It helps people get out of dangerous, domestic violence situations. It helps people, stay employed. It helps people get unemployment benefits. Legal services create stability and they help people maintain the lifestyle that will keep them stable long term. Second, it prevents future issues. So what we want to do is keep a problem from happening. We want to do this upstream work as opposed to trying to catch something when it's become a huge issue. So we don't want somebody to come to us already having a crisis. We want to have talked to them when they're just starting to maybe have an issue with their landlord, for example, and tell them, oh, hey, here's your rights as a tenant in Washington. You can send your landlord this letter, for example, instead of, oh, you're getting evicted. Yeah, that is not something we can help with right at this very second, because the case is tomorrow. You are going to need to go to the courthouse and talk to the Housing Justice Project there, because there's nothing we can do. But if they maybe talked to us prior, we might have been able to give them an attorney or a resource that said, hey, if you can't pay your rent, talk to your landlord and see if you can get your rent, or if you can get your due date for your rent paid or move forward a couple days so that it aligns with your public benefits payment date, for example. Improving health. There is a lot of evidence out there that receipt of VA benefits and other income reduces the chances of homelessness, poverty, and hospitalization. So receipt of benefits and legal aid improves health. So there's even these medical legal partnerships across the country that are literally doctors and attorneys working together on healthcare teams, because it's been found that there are so many benefits to having a lawyer involved with medical teams. There's social determinants of health, health harming legal issues. So, for example, if a kid keeps coming into, this is the example that they use all the time, if a kid keeps coming into a doctor's office over and over and over again with asthma, they could keep giving them an inhaler, or they could ask, hey, what is your home situation look like? Oh, I've got a ton of mold in my house. Oh, well, we could continue giving the kid an inhaler, or we could send them to the attorney and have them try to get that kid out of the moldy house, for example. So legal assistance helps people be healthier. And then the last reason is that it protects survivors. So the benefit of connecting people to legal services is literally saving lives. Like, domestic violence is a huge issue, and being able to connect people with protection orders, for example, or harassment, anti-harassment orders, saves lives. Being able to help, moms who are, or fathers or parents generally, who are having issues with their exes or who feel like their kids are in danger, get safety there, saves kids' lives. And so protecting survivors is just another reason that legal aid is important here. And a lot of the time, people may not outwardly ask for help, but if you ask them, hey, is everything okay with your family right now? Or hey, is there anything you have any questions about for legal issues with your family? They might, if they're in the right situation, if their partner isn't in the room, and you shouldn't ask that question if the partner's in the room, for the record, they might open up to you, especially if you have a trusting relationship with them. So, as I think everybody here knows, the legal aid landscape, and generally the social service landscape, can feel very much like that on the right there, of you want somebody to get connected with services, you send them there, they come back and say, well, that service told me that they can't help because insert one of 3,000 different reasons here. I couldn't get through to their hotline. They're not accepting referrals right now. I make too much money. They only help with these particular issues. I live right outside their geographic boundaries. And then you're like, okay, well, where else do I send this person? This is so frustrating. How do you find these resources? So the dream for us here in Washington is to be able to connect people directly from point A to point B. Somebody calls us, we connect them with legal services that they need, and that's it. Their problem is solved. Realistically, there's going to be, slight deviations from that. There's going to be problems. But what we don't want is what's on the right there, and a lot of the time, I think that's what that feels like for veterans, and sometimes what it feels like for us too. We get these calls, and it's like, we don't like sending people to like 5 or 6 different places. Nobody here, I think, probably likes sending people to 5 or 6 different places. It's not fun. Also, it pisses people off. So, legal aid in Washington, there are just a variety of different programs. So the first one to be aware of is Northwest Justice Project. It's the largest civil legal aid agency in the state, and it manages the Clear Line. Who has experience with the Clear Line?
I know, but
Okay. So the Clear Line is what a lot of rural counties have to call to connect with volunteer legal services, with legal aid agencies in their local counties. Some of these legal aid agencies also have their own referral intake lines, but a lot of them go directly through Clear. And Clear is very hard to get a hold of. It's open from 9:15 to 12:15, Monday through Friday, and they often get so many calls that people can't get through. They know this. This has been an ongoing problem. They have Clear Online now, so you can send people for an online intake. This is probably the best thing if the person that you're working with has like internet literacy. However, not all issues can go through Clear Online. So, it's fun. Clear's fun. I used to work for Northwest Justice Project, so I can say that. I think they say that too, though. Local legal aid agencies. This is often staffed by pro bono attorneys, so attorneys that are volunteering that have a completely different job elsewhere. They might volunteer for a couple of hours a week to assist with various different legal issues. Some of them do have on-site staff, but it might be one staff attorney to cover an entire county. They often have legal clinics in the community, like walk-in clinics at a local library, for example. Like Tacoma Pro Bono, for example, is one that's a local legal aid agency, and they have legal clinics in a lot of their libraries, the pop-up legal clinics, they call them, in a lot of their libraries. A lot of them only accept referrals from Clear to try to sort of manage their intakes. Law school legal clinics. This exists in very limited areas. A lot of them have super narrow intake options. They work with community agencies, and there are 3 law schools in Washington. Each of them have their own different law school clinics. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the law school clinics just because there are so many different requirements to get help from these clinics. And then the last one are just miscellaneous other programs. So there's other programs like the Office of Military and Veteran Legal Assistance, for example, or like Teen Child, which helps with kids and youth in need of assistance, that help with miscellaneous other issues or to fill a specific need in Washington or in specific counties. So that's the landscape. Any questions so far about the legal aid landscape or any of these services or any like specific problems that you've had that I might be able to help you kind of navigate?
How do we contact your office? Do you have a website or a phone number?
Yes, that would have been helpful for me to include early on, yeah. It's at the very end, there's a shot at the very end. But it's just omvla@atg.wa.gov. And our table is right out there too, right out the doors there, and we've got all of our flyers and everything.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So Clear Online means that they can go fill something out online and someone will contact them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And will they be contacted back between the hours of 9:15 and 12:15?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Usually it's in the afternoon because the Clear attorneys that contact them are manning the Clear line in the morning.
Got it.
So the person who contacts them from Clear will be an attorney?
Usually, unless they need more information. They will eventually end up talking to an attorney, but sometimes they get a call back from a screener who then has to get more information from them about their legal issue.
Do you know what the turnaround time on the callback is?
No idea.
Okay.
Absolutely no idea.
So I have a question. I was under the impression that your office doesn't refer for anything that has to do with the military, that it was just civil. That's what I have. I have a pamphlet of yours that says only civil issues. And upgrades, I would upgrades from discharges, I would consider militaries.
So
is that-
by civil, we mean non-criminal, not necessarily non-military issues.
So that wasn't clear when I spoke to somebody at your office.
Okay, Good to know, yeah. So yeah, you can refer those. We don't have a ton of pro bono attorneys that do that work. There aren't that many pro bono attorneys that do that work.
Yeah.
But we can, and we often send people like, here's just an idea of how discharge upgrades may go to. So that's the time when we might send people a, like a self-help document too.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, all right. So, Washington Law Help. Washington Law Help is also run by Northwest Justice Project. If you are not familiar with it, this is an incredible resource to help people connect with legal services in Washington. And so Washington Law Help, all of these different categories have anywhere from 1 to 100 different publications that are written at about an 8th grade level. So for somebody who doesn't understand legal issues, they're written at a level that anybody can understand about legal problems. And so there are issues about, for example, divorce. There's just a packet that is literally just about like, how do I start a divorce in Washington? General information about a divorce in Washington. For house and apartment, your rights as a tenant. Yep.
When you say you send packets out to people, is it these packets?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Or sometimes we'll send them from other organizations if Washington Law Help doesn't have them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Money and debt. There's like what money can't be taken to pay for a debt, for example. And so this is a fantastic resource. It doesn't have everything. There's not every single legal issue you've ever thought of on here, but there is a lot on here. All right, so legal needs. Getting into the actual like how to figure out legal needs here. Look for files. So we already have talked about this a little bit, but when you're thinking about the questions that you want to ask, when you're trying to identify legal issues, you want to ask some specific questions or think about how these questions make sense in your practice. All right, so family and safety. So questions you might be able to ask here are you worried about your personal safety? Do fights at home ever get physical? Those are ones to identify domestic violence issues. And there's going to be more questions later on that you can ask about that are just more about family law issues generally. But if you're really trying to narrow in on is there domestic violence, these are 2 questions that you can ask that will narrow in on is there domestic violence. And again, if you think that this might be a problem and the partner is in the room, don't ask this question. Just don't ask this. You can just skip it. Just 100% skip it or kick the person out, kick the partner out. Yeah, just gonna leave it with that. Income and debt. Are you making ends meet with your income? Do you owe anyone money? That second one is really important as a lot of the time people do not think to mention that until it becomes a really gigantic problem and they are getting sued for it. Or do you owe any businesses money is another one that I've asked. Living situation. What is your housing situation today? Are you worried about it? So this one used to be like, are you worried about becoming homeless soon? But we have such a gigantic homeless problem in Washington that it needed to be amended to include that a lot of the veterans that we are going to be working with are already homeless. And so again, if you're working with a homeless vet, this is probably not a great question to ask, but talking to them about like, are there reasons why, hey, if you're working with a homeless vet and you're trying to help them get into housing, you probably already know what the barriers are to them getting housing. But if you don't, you can ask them like, do you owe any debt to a prior landlord? Like, do you have an eviction on your record? Like, are there legal barriers to you getting into housing that might be able to be solved? But if you have somebody that is housed, this is a good question to ask, as you can kind of get a sense with them about, is there something that might be causing problems? Employment. Do you have any issues finding or keeping a job? And do you get accommodations if you need them? Not everyone is going to know what accommodations are. You might need to sort of explain what that is. But I mean, for some vets, if they're not looking for a job, again, don't ask it. But these are just ideas and questions you can ask to kind of get at legal issues. And then the last one here is status and services. Does your discharge prevent you from getting benefits? So status here a lot of the time could be like military status, discharge status. And then the last one is, are you set up for the future? So this one is more of a general question about like, do they have a will? Do they have a power of attorney? Do they have a healthcare directive? Have they told people what they want at the end of their life? Like, have they prepared what they need to prepare? And what I tell people is it's important to have a will even if you don't have very much money. Like, it's important to prepare for the end of the life even if you don't have a lot of money. And even if you only fill out the power of attorney and the healthcare directive to tell people what to do, I've told people that before. It's important to just tell people what you want at the end of your life. All right, so getting into some more specific questions here. More questions asked for family and safety. Are you co-parenting with someone? Is that going okay? This could open up a really gigantic can of worms, and I'm aware of that. I think this one is sort of a know the situation here. But this one could also tell you things about like, are there child custody issues going on? Are they worried about, that the other co-parent is neglecting their kids? Is there worries about, that they're not getting paid the child support, or that they are being charged too much child support? Are you ever scared of your partner or the people that you live with? Again, this one is one that you want to be careful about when you ask it, but it can give you really valuable information. And then do you have any other concerns about your safety? So this one gets at, do you need to help somebody file for an anti-harassment order or or do you need to connect them with legal aid to help them file for a anti-harassment order or a sexual assault protection order? Or, are there any other concerns that you might be able to help them connect with legal services about? So that being said, it's very unlikely. I have very rarely had it happen that somebody came to me and said, I have a legal issue regarding child custody and I need assistance with it. Most of the time, I get stuff like this. This sucks. The kids, the judge said I need this and I'm so pissed, and a lot of the time you're gonna have to listen for the legal issue in a conversation and then kind of pull out a legal issue and go, wow, actually it sounds like it might be helpful for you to be connected with this local legal aid program that might be able to help talk to you about like what you might be able to do if you're thinking that you want a divorce. Like, listen for the legal issue that isn't being said in conversations that you're having with your clients or with your patients. Because a lot of the time clients are not gonna know that things are a legal issue until you kind of hear them and be like, hey, that sounds like it might actually be something that a lawyer might be able to help you with. Do you want me to refer you to a lawyer? Like this one, for example, like this could be like stalking. This person could be stalking them. Like, you want to be listening for that kind of thing. This one could be domestic violence. This one could be child custody. And then, okay, so legal resources, family, and safety here. So this is the Washington Law Help resources for family law. Let's see what happened. Oh, cool. All right. So this is divorce, and so this is actually Washington Law Help here. So as you can see, there are all of these different options for family law here in Washington. And that's just under the basics. So there's divorce and legal separation and military families. And there's just every single category that I showed earlier has this type of information on it. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you is these Washington forms online. This is a relatively new thing that Washington Law Help did a couple of years ago. And this is like, they call them interviews, but they're like, think about TurboTax, where they walk you through and they ask you a whole bunch of questions, and then they spit out your tax return at the end. That's essentially what this does. So when you're going through and you fill it out, they do this interview. it fills out all the forms, and at the end, you get the form that you need to send to your landlord, or you have your divorce forms, or you have whatever forms you need here. It's an incredible resource. And so there are all of these options here, file for divorce, respond to divorce. There's a lot of options. They're adding more pretty consistently. They've recently added healthcare directives and powers of attorney, so they're consistently adding more options here. So, so there's divorce, general family law forms. There's just a bunch of forms that they've got on there that they can help you fill out. And then there's also protection orders on there as well. And then there's also other Washington law help resources, or how is child support set? So if you've got somebody that's just like, I just don't know what's gonna go on in court, and I don't know how child support is gonna be set, and I just don't understand, you can send them this and be like, hey, here's an overview of how child support is set in Washington. Parenting plans, again, I don't know how the judge is gonna decide parenting plans, just seems so super confusing, what are they gonna do? Here's an idea about how parenting plans are done. And unmarried couples, Washington parenting law. That one's just really helpful. I use that one all the time. All right, more income, any questions about like the family law resources or anything? Yeah.
Have different limits to access. Where, obviously this is income driven, so where do you guys set the division between help and no help for you?
400% of federal poverty line.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And we try to, even if somebody's over that, we try to at least give them information. But we can't connect them with a free attorney, a pro bono attorney. All right, more questions asked about income and debt. Are you able to pay your bills each month? That one's just really helpful to ask. Is anyone calling you or sending you letters about money they say that you owe? Again, this is one that you probably want to ask about sooner rather than later, as what you don't want is somebody to come in and be like, I got a lawsuit that I'm being sued for debt from 9 years ago, 5 years ago. And deal with the VA, Social Security, or any US state money. The VA is and Social Security, but those are both pretty big ones. Here, as does anyone here have any experience with VA overpayments? Yeah, that's why. Yeah, and as you guys all know, as everyone here knows, the VA is absolutely ruthless when they take money for VA overpayments too. So, you want to ask about that one. And you want to send them to a lawyer really fast too, because there's really short deadlines on that. And if they're like, I don't know, you want to tell them that there's really short deadlines on that, because there are really short deadlines on keeping the money while an overpayment appeal is going through. Just giving you a tip there. Because as a person who's had to get that the day before, the deadline before, I don't like it. It's not fun. So listening for the legal problem here. This one, charity care. Somebody's probably eligible for charity care if they're only getting VA pension and the hospital's now telling them that they owe thousands and thousands of dollars. Are people here familiar with what charity care is? No? Okay, well that's cool, okay. So charity care is a program in Washington State where hospitals are required to either entirely erase or cut down a bill very significantly for people who can't afford it. And it is a requirement under state law. And so they have to do this. Do you have a question?
Does that include ambulance?
No. Yeah. No, it's hospitals only. Which really super sucks. But they have to cut it down, and it depends on your income. And if if a hospital's not doing that, let us know. If they're refusing, let us know. We want to know about that. So listen for if somebody's being billed for a whole bunch of money from a hospital, because that's not just something that they have to kind of tough out and manage on their own and figure out. Like, even if the bill is from a long time ago, they might be eligible for charity care to get help paying it. I told them I was in jail, but they still paid me, and now they say that I owe them. I'm talking about the VA again here. I used to work for, my first internship was with Northwest Justice Project, and I used to work with incarcerated veterans down at Stafford Creek. And we would tell the VA, or we would have our veterans tell the VA, I'm incarcerated, you should stop paying me, I'm not eligible because I'm incarcerated. And the VA would keep paying them. And then the VA would eventually figure out that they were incarcerated, despite the fact that they've been told that they were incarcerated, and assess a massive overpayment, like 10 years worth of benefits overpayment. And a lot of the time, yes, you want to be like, oh, well, why did the person spend this money, or why did the spouse spend this money? But a lot of the time, if you've got a spouse that has no income coming in, it's really hard to not have $3,000 a month coming in your bank account and not spend that money. Like, the reality of that situation is it's really hard to not have a spouse spend money if they don't have any other money coming in. Did you have a question in the back?
Yeah, I had a question. I just wanted to share this. Yeah, I was working with the incarcerated veteran. They stopped paying him, but they still kept paying his wife VAQ. So that's something you gotta watch for.
Yeah, you gotta watch for that. And they, and then eventually they'll run, it's called a match with Social Security. They'll run that match, and then they'll be like, oh my God, you're incarcerated? Yeah. And then they'll be like, you owe us so much money, and we're gonna cut your benefits for the rest of your life forever. And again, that is something where a lawyer can get involved and be like, look at this letter that's in his file that he told you 10 years ago he was incarcerated. This one, they keep calling me, saying I owe them, extorting me, they won't leave me alone. You can tell collection agencies to stop calling you. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean the debt goes away, but you can tell them to stop calling you. You should, again, this is not legal advice, but tell them that doesn't mean the debt goes away. There was a misunderstanding one time. Legal resources, income, and debt. So again, there's Washington Law Help forms for answering a lawsuit for debt collection, legal financial obligations and fines, and identity theft. So legal financial obligations and fines. Did anybody hear about the Blake decision last year about drug convictions? Yeah. And so there's some work that's been done about making sure that people get their Blake refunds back if they paid legal financial obligations. And there's been some work here that I think, not sure NJP, I'm not sure if that's the exact one here, but there's other forms, and I think there's a link on Northwest Justice Project's site about making sure that people can get their Blake refunds back too.
Can you elaborate on what that is?
Yes, except for
You have to be dangerous?
Yeah, that's pretty much my thing. Yeah, so essentially the Washington Supreme Court decided that having it be that our drug possession statute was unconstitutional. That is essentially as much information as I'm going to give, because I cannot remember the exact details of this, so probably should not have brought it up, honestly, because I'm so bad at this. Yeah, but they decided that it's unconstitutional, and so they ended up having to do a whole bunch of stuff.
Are they proactively addressing it, or?
They are, counties are collectively addressing it, yeah.
Yeah. The key is, so the person has to contact the county.
Yes.
There's no requirement for the county to go out and contact however many.
Our definition of proactive is different.
Some of the counties are doing more than others. Yeah, some counties are doing more than others, is what I'll say. Yeah, and then other Washington Law Help resources here, debtors' rights, dealing with collections agencies. So that's where you'll get the information about, like, if a collection agency is calling you, what can you tell them? And what does that actually do? And then getting help with medical debt in Washington State. So that goes over this charity care that I was talking about earlier. So again, that's the link to that page. And then we also have a consumer rights or consumer complaint center at the Attorney General's office, and it's an informal complaint resolution office, and so a consumer can contact the office and making a complaint about a business. Then the Consumer Resource Center will contact the business and try to informally resolve the complaint. The complaint form is available online, by mail, or by phone, and that is the complaint form there. Ian used to work for that. Am I missing anything, Ian? Okay.
No.
All right. More questions? Any questions about income, debt, anything like that?
Consumer complaint line, would that be somewhere where someone could report a contractor for doing like bad work? Because that happens a lot in the rural community.
I'm putting that already in there.
So you could file a complaint and they can provide resources on where else you might be able to complain directly against the contractor, like
Okay.
Department of Industries.
Okay.
But we can or they can also send out the complaint to the contractor and try to resolve the dispute directly.
Okay.
The informal complaint resolution process, that's how our office gets information to determine how to bring lawsuits or investigations against businesses. So when you have an issue, that data helps our office decide what issues people in Washington are facing. So any kind of consumer issue, you can reach out, they'll provide resources and whatever support that they can.
Any other questions? All right, more questions asked about living situation. We already talked about this a little bit, but like, are you worried you might become homeless in the next month? That's a good one for people who are currently housed. Does your house or apartment have mold, bugs, water, leaks, no running water, anything like that? Anything like that just kind of gives people an option to be like, oh, no, it doesn't even do that, but you know, like, I called my landlord and it doesn't, you know, gives them options there to sort of tell you. Because I think what I found when I was, you know, doing legal aid directly is that if I listed about like mold, bugs, water, leak, you know, if I just gave a list like that, people would be like, nope. And then like 25 minutes later, they'd be like, oh, but actually my bathtub hasn't worked for like, it doesn't drain. It's like, yeah, okay, that was actually also part of the like, yeah, okay, that was, when I asked about the list earlier, I should have been like, but you can't include everything. So, and then this last one here is, have you been rejected for housing due to an eviction or debt due to a prior landlord? This is a huge issue, a huge issue. Debt due to a prior landlord is one that a lot of landlords will just straight up reject for, and it sucks, because like, sometimes that debt is not legit. Like, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. I will say, I've had luck guilt tripping the landlords and being like, you are keeping a veteran on the streets. That has worked for me before. That being said, you also sometimes just need to sometimes need to have an attorney be like, that is not legitimate debt and you cannot be charging that person for this. But it's a legal referral you can make, you 100% should make. That also gives the legal aid agencies information about landlords that are not doing what they're supposed to. And then the eviction also is an important one too. And obviously, like, I think this should go without saying, if somebody's being evicted, please, I'll go back to the other one here in just a second. Send them to the eviction defense line. Washington State has guaranteed right to counsel for eviction now. As of last summer. There's some income requirements there, but this is the eviction defense line. It will connect your clients with the resource in their local community. Do you have a question?
Yes, does non-taxable income count towards
Yes.
the income?
Yes, yeah. So again, listening to the legal problem here, these are all issues that either, oh, sorry, yep.
I'm really sorry.
Oh, no.
Could I get that number again, please?
Oh, yep, and I was gonna go back to this one here in a sec too, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. These are all issues that I've had and that my clients have had. And I guess I should say, I used to work for Northwest Justice Project as a legal aid attorney, so I used to do housing and VA benefits work. Like, this one was particularly terrible. But again, listen for what a veteran's not telling you. So, all right, legal situation. There were some new landlord-tenant laws that were enacted earlier this year that it's worth going to look at the publication about, just because there were some changes to like what damages people can charge for, or like what security deposit issues people can charge for at the end of the lease, for example, or what they have to do when somebody moves in. Housing, getting a security deposit back that has a letter to a landlord saying like, you had this many days and I didn't get anything from you. You have the obligation to do this.
If someone was, I've worked with someone who was recently evicted, we did everything we could, but didn't know about this, and they are currently homeless, is this like something that we could give them as a resource kind of retroactively to see if there's something that can be done?
I would.
Okay.
It's rare, but there is a possibility of getting it reversed, but it is rare. I think I've only seen it happen like once or twice, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there are some other options like making it so that it can't affect their future housing options. So yeah, worth it.
Thank you.
And then your rights as a tenant in Washington State. This is a really large packet, and it's just like, your landlord can do this. They can't do this. You can do this. You can't do this. Read your lease. Like, if I was giving advice to any veteran, it would be read your lease. Yes, it's long. Read your lease. Yeah.
So do veterans still have protections if they don't have a written lease?
Yes.
Verbal agreements?
Yes. That pains my lawyer heart, but yes. Yeah. There are protections, but yeah. Yep.
So if the lease says something that is outside of the law, but they signed it, does the lease trump or?
The law.
Okay.
The law. They can't, a person can't sign away their rights under the law, except for in very limited circumstances, so that's why I sort of answered it there. So, yeah, very super limited circumstances, so, yeah, most of the time though, yeah. Right, more questions to ask, oh, actually I was gonna go back and say, there are some leases in Washington that are trying to get military service members to sign away their USERRA rights. Watch out for that. Let us know about that. Like saying that if somebody has to move out due to military service, that they can just trash all their stuff.
That's a choice.
It is a choice. It is a decision. Yeah, let us know if you see that. We really would like to know about that. Yeah. All right, employment. Were you rejected for a job and think it's discrimination? This one is another one of those questions you might want to be careful about asking. If recently unemployed, are you getting unemployment compensation? This was a huge problem, as I'm sure everybody here probably saw during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen it as much in the last little bit, but during COVID, this was a huge problem that we saw. To the extent that like every attorney at NJP, at Northwest Justice Project, was suddenly doing unemployment cases because we needed help. And then have you lost your job recently? What happened? I haven't gotten my paycheck from 2 weeks ago. They keep saying they'll pay me. You can complain about this. This is a thing you can complain about to the department or to the state, L&I. This is not legal. It doesn't matter if they keep saying they'll pay you. This is illegal. This is not okay. That's super duper not okay. That's also not okay. There's a lot of things that employers think maybe are okay, they're not okay. And I've heard a lot of them. So, let's see, Washington Law Help Forms, clearing a drug possession conviction, that goes back to the Blake thing I was talking about earlier. How are you owed wages? How L&I can help you get the wages your employer owes you. I lost my job, do I have rights? That includes things like, do they have to pay me my last paycheck? Yes. Do I have to return my uniform? Yes. Basic stuff like that.
Paying on sick days.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, like essentially what rights do they have, what rights do I have, what do I have to do, what do they have to do? And again, all these things are written at an 8th grade level, which is what people, the average American reads at a 6th grade level. And so they write these things at anywhere from like a 6th to an 8th grade level so that anybody with any level of literacy or understanding of the legal system can understand what is going on or what their legal rights are. Any questions about the employment stuff? All right, more questions asked about status, more questions asked about status and services. Are you getting health care or any other benefits from the VA or any other government? Oh yeah, go
I
ahead.
just have one question on employment.
Yep.
We're right on the Oregon border, we got a lot of veterans who work in Oregon, but they fill out their W-2, or the W-4 saying they don't want to have taxes removed. My employer says they are still obligated to take Oregon taxes from them.
I have no idea about that one. I have. That is one that you could send to our office so we can find somebody that knows tax stuff to answer the question though. So, because we have a lot of pro bono attorneys that I'm sure would love to be able to answer that question, so. Yeah, and if there's like specific questions that you've got about, like, can they do this, can they not do this, send them to our office and we can try to get an answer for you from a pro bono attorney for a client. Are you getting health care or any other benefits from the VA or any other government program? If not, and you think they might be eligible, help them apply. Send them to a lawyer, send them to DSHS, send them to the VA to help them apply. Do you have a will or other end-of-life documents? Again, we talked about this earlier. I tell people it's helpful to have a will even if you don't have very much money. And I think a lot of the time that answers people's questions about like, I have no money, why do I need a will? Because it helps people know what you want done with the stuff that you have. And because a healthcare directive and a power of attorney tell people who you want making decisions and what the decisions are that you want at the end of your life. And if ineligible for the VA, kind of get into maybe a little bit more why, but have you ever applied for a discharge upgrade? Why are you ineligible? Is that something you want help with? If so, send them to veteran service officer, send them to a legal aid attorney, send them to a national organization that helps with discharge upgrades. That is like one of the easiest things that you can do is identify people who are not eligible and try to help them get connected with services. So this one, PACT Act. Is everybody here familiar with the PACT Act more or less generally? Yes, okay. Does anybody not know what it is? Food stamp card just stopped working. Called the SHS. Trying to figure out what happened there. Sometimes it's an error. Sometimes there's an actual problem. Doesn't hurt to at least figure out what happened there. Again, this one is maybe you want to get into a little bit more about that. But again, a lot of the time, things are never going to be as smooth as they even are here. This is all going to be in like some, longer discussion of something else too. So a lot of the time it's like pulling these things out from a much longer conversation that you're probably having with a person. Status and services. All right, so this is the only one where I am not giving a lot of Washington Law Help stuff because Swords to Plowshares is such an incredible resource. So Swords to Plowshares is a California organization that is a nonprofit organization that is homelessness services, but they also have a legal branch. and they create self-help guides that are just for veterans to connect veterans with, or to tell veterans about their legal needs. So for example, there's just one about upgrading your discharge and changing the reason for your discharge. This one's fantastic. It just tells people like how you can apply here. VA character service determinations. This just gives people access to VA benefits as opposed to changing their DD-214, changing their discharge. Writing your PTSD stressor statement. If somebody's applying for VA benefits and they need to write a stressor statement, here's one about how to do that. Here's some tips from people who do this every single day and help vets write these things every single day. Here's some tips. Overpayments, C&P examinations. If you've got somebody going to a C&P examination, doesn't hurt to at least give them, you can give them some information, or compensation and pension examination for a VA benefits claim. Doesn't hurt to give them the information that somebody else has written about. Here's what this might look like, especially if they might learn better by reading or, having something that they can look at right before the exam too. Requesting copies of military records. I actually use that one more myself than I did send it to clients. DD-214 name corrections for transgender vets, as well as DD-214 corrections for vets discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and prior policies. Those are both really super important and ones that we want to make sure that we are connecting as many veterans as possible with resources to fix those issues, because that is just a massive injustice that we need to fix as a state, as a nation. We need to make sure that we address those issues, and there has not been nearly enough done to make sure that vets separated under Don't Ask, Don't Tell or under other policies were able to get their discharges changed. I think a couple of years ago, only 8% of vets who were separated under Don't Ask, Don't Tell had gotten a discharge upgrade. And that's a couple-year-old stat, but again, this is something that they're eligible for a discharge upgrade. Send them to legal aid. Agent Orange. Like, there's just so many, there's just great information on source pleasures here. And the Washington Law Help, as I mentioned earlier, they have updated Durable Power of Attorney and Healthcare Directive and Living Will. All right, here's information about how to ask us for help. So requirements for help for us. 1, you live in or your duty station is in Washington State, and the legal issues in Washington State. We understand that a lot of the time people from out of Washington State have a legal issue in Washington State. And we understand that sometimes people live outside Washington State and need help again with a legal issue in the state. Unfortunately, under the statute that controls our program, we are not allowed to help with those issues. They have to be in Washington, and the legal issue has to be in Washington. Veteran, service member, or family member, this includes survivors. This includes kids who are dependent children under the age of 21. They need help with a non-criminal legal problem. So we can't help anybody who is involved in a criminal matter with their criminal case. And then income under 4 times the federal poverty line. So for one person, that's about just over $4,800 a month, and for a 4-person family, that's $10,000 a month. What questions are there about our eligibility or getting people to our services? Nothing? Okay. So we refer people to pro bono attorneys. I would say, just kind of setting some expectations here. 1, there are not enough pro bono attorneys that we have signed up for our program to help all the vets that need our help. There are about 80, I think, pro bono attorneys we have signed up right now, and we are on track to get about 500 requests for assistance this year. So, yep.
Just real quick, sorry. So with the eligibility requirements for help, it has to be legal, probably Washington State, but the person living in Washington State. How do the federal VA problems and Social Security problems that you mentioned earlier, how do those fit in there?
Those are 5. Yeah, those are fine. They can't, so they can't be like, I live in Washington State, but I need help with an Oregon child support case, for example. So federal issues are fine, but we don't have people barred in other states.
Oregon unemployment?
No, we don't have anybody barred. So,
Do you have a resource to refer people to
Yes.
Oregon?
yes, we can refer, so there's legal aid organizations in every state, and so we try to refer people to other states. So we can refer all the time, and we do. We just don't have resources. So, yep.
For veterans that need assistance with getting their rating changed or discharge changed, what is the turnaround time for that?
For us, we don't have any attorneys that know how to do that at the moment, so, and that is very frustrating to me. So it's about trying to find a referral elsewhere, and so it can take us some time to try to find one. We generally try to send them to like a local resource, like if in King County, for example, King County Veterans Program has a contract with Northwest Justice Project, and we'll send them there. Otherwise, we'll try to send them to like a national organization that does those types of cases. But we are trying very hard to bring in more attorneys that are able to do that work because we know it's a gap in our services. Yep.
Yeah, with that, I usually refer them out to VSOs or TVSOs.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they'll take them right there, because I work for Levada on that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I don't know, but in King County, VSOs are hard to come by.
Yeah, refer to King County Veterans Program in King County, and they can refer either to Washington Department of Veterans Affairs, their VSO that they've got under the Veterans Seniors and Human Services Levy, or to Northwest Justice Project. And they have attorneys on staff to help.
There's also a national pro bono organization called NVLSP.
Yep.
Never helped.
Yep.
NELSP.
Yep.
November 15th.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we don't have enough attorneys. We try really, really hard to connect people as fast as we can, as effectively as we can. But just the reality is that we don't have enough attorneys to help everybody who needs help. And so we do the best that we can. But I just want to be very clear that we can't help everyone who needs help. Yeah. So, but we do try to give everyone resources. We try to give everyone either like self-help resources or a referral to another organization. We don't just say, sorry, that sucks, and send somebody off. Like, we try to give everyone at least some sort of assistance. So there's my contact information. We have got some time here. We've got about 25 minutes. So I was just gonna say, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask them, but otherwise go explore tables and have fun before the next session. And grab candy from our table. We've got a lot of candy.
I'm gonna ask you.